unlike Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, is known throughout his life essentially by both names, Yaakov and Yisrael, Jacob and Israel. The Midrash, which is rabbinic legend on the Torah, brings a particularly penetrating insight where we learn that we have no permanent name. Our names change, all according to the work we are commanded to do in the given moment. Our names change just like our circumstances and our perspectives change. We are influenced by our experiences and the wisdom they give us, and our different names allow us to play the unique roles that make us who we are. For example, sometimes I step into the name rabbi or teacher or son, other times husband, father, brother, and friend. Right? These names, if you will, are all part of me that are equally and authentically me. There isn't just one Shem Kavua, one fixed name, because we are not Kavua. We are not fixed. We are not permanent or unchanging. We step into different roles at all kinds of different moments in our lives. So based on this Midrash, based on this rabbinic legend, God changes Jacob's name to teach us that we should not get lost or bogged down in one name or one term or description for ourselves. We have a variety of jobs to do in our lifetimes, and all of those compose who we are in our entirety. We are both the children of Jacob and the children of Israel. Rather than lose ourselves in the fear of unknown change and impermanence, we learn from the Midrash, we learn from this rabbinic legend that we must view the multiplicity of potential names as a gift, as a mission through which to serve God. Now, in addition to acknowledging the potential that names can provide, it's also important that we're sensitive to the situations in which names can create division and even hurt. In Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Juliet discovers that her beloved Romeo is from the Montague family, her family's arch rivals. Trying to convince herself that names don't matter, that their families can't stop their love, Juliet famously says, "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself. Though not a Montague, what's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." For Juliet, a different name threatens and tears her away from her beloved Romeo. The name Montague symbolizes the other, the enemy in that case, just as in our modern era when we created the tale of the Jets and the Sharks in West Side Story. This is one of the dangers that we face daily in our society when we use names to separate and divide, to attack others. It's natural to seek affinity groups and coalesce around shared principles, but we must genuinely ask ourselves, if we are using names to push out difference, to isolate and alienate, to make the other even more other. Denominations, political parties or leanings, even team names in sports. All the names that come with our associations and values are essential and helpful and often clarify what we stand for and make us feel proud to be a part of something that seems bigger than ourselves. And yet, with those organizing names, we must still develop the sensitivity to hear the needs of both those who are in our associations and groupings and those who we perceive or perceive themselves as outside of those same groups. As a fan of the Washington football team, sorry, Cowboys fans, you knew I knew the Whitesides were already shaking their head. They knew where this was going, right? It's hardly a secret about me by now, my fourth year here in Dallas. We need look no further than the ongoing persistent controversy regarding their name, which was hurtful to many. This controversy has long engendered passionate feelings nationally, which finally before this season led to a removal of their name and the commitment to ultimately change the name to one that is inclusive rather than exclusive and offensive. Even now, I still find myself inadvertently lapsing and calling the team by the name which I called them for the first 48 years of my life. But every time I consciously get myself to call them the Washington football team, I'm reminded that tradition, revenue, and branding should never be enough of a reason to keep a name that causes pain. Team names and the use of names in general should help unite us in support of common causes rather than divide us further. Returning to our original question, why change Jacob's name at all? We now see a couple possible ways of approaching this name change. The Midrash explains that the use of both Jacob and Israel as names teach us that we live with a multiplicity of names and purposes in our lives. Names and people are not meant to be static, and change is actually a gift in that sense. Shakespeare's Juliet takes it a step further, and she and the controversy regarding Washington's football team shows us that names have the potential to draw what might seem arbitrary, but definitely painful lines in terms of who is in and who is out. In this light, Jacob's name change challenges us to reevaluate how attached we are to names and whether or not they are helpful or hurtful. I'd like to offer a third approach that is based on the Eish Kodesh, Rabbi Kalonymus Kalman Shapira, who was a renowned Polish rabbi who was murdered by the Nazis during the Shoah. The Eish Kodesh hones in on the name Yisrael itself. Why Yisrael? Why that name? At the core of this new name is the word sar, which means, usually translated as officer or prince. The Eish Kodesh tells us that Jacob's name was changed to Israel because even when he was struggling and wrestling, he did not lose sight of the officer or the prince within himself. He did not allow his suffering and fear to conceal his dignity and his value and sense of self-worth. Yes, like the Midrash, we have many concurrent names and purposes. Yes, like Juliet, we struggle with the divisive potential with which names can be imbued. At our core, though, whether we are specifically Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, members of the Jewish people, or whether we are, in a more universal sense, members of the human race, we all share the same root name, Sar. We are each officers and princes with invaluable princesses with invaluable, humbling, and unifying human dignity. This is what Jacob's name change teaches us, because even when we are lost, even when we are struggling and hurting through a pandemic that continues to ravage our country and our world, we still all share the same name. We are all God's creations, and we need to coalesce around that understanding as we attempt to heal both a very dangerous physical illness and also what dangerously ails us spiritually as a society and how we refer to other people and what names we use. May we one day come to experience the unifying potential in a name heralded by the prophet Zechariah, which we refer to multiple times daily in the end of the Aleinu prayer. Bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We hope that through our words and deeds and through using names to unify and inspire rather than divide and hurt, that we may ultimately bring about the day when God's name will be one and unified, and humanity unified in God's service. Keni hi ratzon, may it soon be so. Shabbat shalom. Baruch tiyeh, bruchim to you.